Hello, everybody. How's it going? Hope you guys are all having a good time. Thanks for watching The Spirit of Vinyl. I'm Craig. Well, this week I want to talk about this album right here, The Best of the Animals. It's from 1966, and it's a greatest hits compilation. There's the back of it right there. There's your track listing. That is not in order as to what's on the record. It's not the way it plays. That's listed on the inside. It's a gatefold. It's only got one record, but it is a gatefold. Opens up. It's got this, it's from the 60s. So this is kind of like glued in there. There's your track listing, picture of the band. And all this writing is kind of like a record review type thing that somebody had wrote who works for some magazine. This album, and you can see it's got a price tag on it. It says $2.99. I got this album. My friend Rick died, and I cleaned out his apartment. This is one of the albums. So that's probably what he paid for it the last time. You could get this for like $10. I got this listed as I got this cover listed as Good Plus because it has a split right here. You can see there's a split right there. So that's why. Other than that, it's not really in too bad a shape. The record itself, I also have listed as Good Plus. There are pops kind of throughout it, and it does skip on song 3 of side 1, but it doesn't stay. It just kind of skips over. It doesn't get stuck. It's got that cool MGM logo. I like the color and the label of the label on here. I've had this album. My friend Rick died 6 or 7 years ago, and I got his records then, so I've had this since then, but I've never played it. Sometimes I'm not sure what I want to talk about, so I let the great random Discogs generator pick an album, and that's what I've done and where I came up with this. There's the record number. It's actually a very good album. I mean, it's got 4 songs that we all know. It's My Life is how it starts off on side 1. And then it ends side 1 with House of the Rising Sun. Side 2 starts with We Gotta Get Out of This Place and ends with Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Those are 4 songs that we all know by the Animals. It's kind of a smart idea to bookend songs that everybody knows in the middle in this greatest hits album. These other songs I did not know at all. I did really like a song called I'm Mad. It's a 4-song on side 1. It has a great keyboard sound to it. That old school organ from the 60s, that hippie sound, kind of what they were doing in the Doors and so on. The Animals were doing the same thing. And it's actually very good all the way through. Like I said, side 1 ends with House of the Rising Sun, which I think might be one of the greatest rock songs ever written, honestly. It's been redone a couple of times. Five Finger Death Punch has done it more recently. I like their version of this song also. But, I mean, the version on this, the original version of House of the Rising Sun is fucking tremendous. It might be one of the greatest rock songs ever written. Overall, I liked the sound of this record. I liked the keyboard, which was, it says keyboards, but they're basically playing, it's like an old school organ is kind of what it sounds like. It's got that cool sound to it. It's really heavy on the keyboard, which is fine for 60s hippie type music. I guess you'd say this is kind of hippie type music. Not so fine when you get too heavily keyboard centric in like the 80s. Some of that synth sound isn't really to my taste, but this I really liked a lot. And like I said, this album is from 66 is when this was put out. This album itself is from 1966, so it's actually holding up fairly well. Like I said, one little skip, but it doesn't stay stuck, so you don't have to do anything. Just kind of popped over a little bit. And there is some popping throughout. It's that staticky sound kind of throughout. Doesn't really take away from the music, but you can hear it in between the songs fairly well. I've got it listed as Good Plus because of the skip. Like I said, I've got this cover listed as Good Plus because of the split. But and it is a split. It's not just come unglued. It's a pretty good, decent sized split that goes about halfway down on the back of it. Overall, like I said, Rick paid $2.99 for it. I'm assuming that's the price he paid. You could get it for $10 on Discogs for, decent price or whatever. So it's not too bad. Um, I recommend it. It's a very good early rock and roll album. You can hear some of that blues influence that's in there, that early stuff and what they were doing. Overall, it's a great album. Older than I am, 1966. This actual record has been around longer than the person holding it, and it still plays, and it's still enjoyable. So, as for the Animals, I never would have bought an Animals album. If it wasn't in with Rick's stuff, I never would have bought it. Never would have crossed my mind. I just would have streamed if I wanted to hear House of the Rising Sun or whatever. So it was nice to hear. I really, really enjoyed it. It's rock and roll. It's got that cool uh, mid 60s sound to it, where like the beatnik music was going out and the more pure rock was coming in. Obviously, still blues influences, like all the people from that era were, like the Who was doing, and the Beatles and the Animals and so on. They were all blues influence. You could tell it was blues influence. Without the blues, we don't have rock and roll. Honestly, we just don't. Um, I use the term hippie music because some of this stuff is like protest type sounds and so on, but it's actually a really good album. It's good to play. My kid, who's 17 years old, was hanging out with me last night when we were listening to it, and he was like, well, it's got House of the Rising Sun on it, so obviously it's got to be a decent album. And as we were listening to it, he's like, God, these guys are really good. Good songwriters, good storytellers. The keyboards are great. The guitar work is pretty good. And lyrically, it's great. It's, altogether, the way they've mixed it and put it all together, it sounds awesome. So even my 17-year-old enjoyed it, who's more of a nu metal fan, and he's kind of into the harder core stuff. So even he enjoyed this album that has been around forever. I also like this cool, how do you really see that MGM logo that's printed on the bottom? It's kind of cool looking. Get the same thing on the inside also, things that you don't see anymore. There's the address of the fan club. I've often wondered if we were to write some of those, if any of those still exist or not, or if anything would happen, or if it would just get lost in the mail. But overall, I highly recommend it. I mean, not highly recommend it, but if you like this type of music, if you like early rock and roll, you can't go wrong with this. It's a greatest hits album, so you get it. It's got all their good stuff. Like I said, the way they bookended the 4 songs that we all kind of know from the Animals, they bookended them on each side of the album. So song 1 and song 5 and song 1 and song 5 on each side are these hits that you already know. And then the stuff that's in between is good also. So go ahead and give it a listen. I hope you enjoy it. The spirit, like I said, the spirit of this reminds me of my friend Rick, because I found this in Rick's stuff, and this is right up Rick's alley. Rick was a friend of mine. He was probably 20 or so years older than me, so if he was still around, he'd be in his mid-70s right now. So this type of music was right up his alley. So